It's noticeable during the day, but.
Ready?
All right, we are on.
Okay, board members at 6 o'clock, please make sure your phones are silent. Members in the audience, please make sure your phones are silent so I don't get distracted. Everybody please stand. And we'll recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yep. Hannah, let me know when you're ready.
I am ready. John Brotherton.
Here.
Andy Graham.
Here.
Moto Johnson.
Here.
Nikki Pettit.
Here.
Joe Robinson.
Here.
Mitch Wilson.
Here.
Tyler Wilson.
Here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is another budget hearing that we have to have. So if everybody can look at that agenda, if anybody has any questions or comments, or corrections or modifications that need made? If not, can we get a motion to approve the agenda for the budget hearing?
So move.
Mr. Brotherton with the first, or the motion, can we get a second?
I'll second.
Joe with a second.
Sorry, okay. Andy Graham.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, we did not have anyone sign up for public forum for this hearing. So we can move on to the adjournment of the hearing. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Brotherton with a motion. Can I have a second?
I second.
Nikki with a second.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. Now we're gonna call the regular scheduled board meeting into order here.
All right, Andy Graham.
Here.
John Brotherton.
Here.
Moto Johnson.
Here.
Nikki Pettit.
Here.
Mitch Wilson.
Here.
Joe Robinson.
Here.
Tyler Wilson.
Here.
Okay, first item for business is looking over the agenda. If anybody had any additions, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right. Never mind. I'll
Okay.
be quiet again.
Okay, that was kind of, any additions, corrections, or modifications? If not, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we got Mitch with the motion and John with the second.
All right, Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Public comments, do we have anybody else on? No?
Checked again.
Okay, so no public comments. Item number 8, consent agenda items. Like every board meeting that we ever had, all items on this consent agenda are eligible. Does anybody have any questions, or do you have anything to speak on the consent agenda?
Unless there's any questions.
Okay. If anybody wants to make the motion, it needs to read in the recommended motion so we can get the personnel report approved as well.
I make the motion that you read it.
Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda items, including personnel report, as submitted with the stipulation that each individual is required to comply with all requirements for new hires as indicated in the Illinois statutes and RCS board policy and procedures, including ratification of bills prepaid by the finance manager under board policy 4-50. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Brotherton with a second. All right, if there's no discussion items or questions on the consent agenda items, then
Ready? John Brotherton.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Nikki Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Number 10. Do you want to start this or you want to just?
All right, well, here we go. This has been exciting for Marcello's, I know, to get ready for his first budget. It's also my first budget. The good news is the budget is balanced and actually in surplus. So he's going to come around here and go through a presentation on the budget and answer, we'll do our best to answer all your questions.
Absolutely. Well, good evening and thanks for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2022 budget. As we go through the short presentation, you'll certainly notice the increase in revenue for the year, primarily driven by ESSER funding. The good news for the district is that we have approximately $10 million in ESSER funding to be spent over the next 2 to 3 years. So that's huge. And we have an additional $900,000 in tier funding to be spent this year. So we've got a lot of revenue and let's go into the PowerPoint and we'll take a look at the first slide, which is the budget summary slide. This slide basically shows the beginning fund balances. It shows revenues and expenditures. It will show the increase or decrease of revenues and expenditures and the ending balance by fund. If I draw your attention to the last column here on the far right, you can see as a district, we had a beginning fund balance of $16.9 million. About 33.9 million in revenue, 33.1 million in expenses, and we're looking at about 776,000 in the good, with an ending balance of about 17.7 million. A few things to note about this slide is all the fund balances are positive. One thing you will see is that about 22.4 million was of the 33.9 was allocated or budgeted to the education fund. That's good news because that's going, those funds are going towards supporting our students academically. In terms of ESSER funding, you can see in O&M, there's 6.6 million in revenue that was budgeted to that particular fund, and 6.3 million are in expenses for the year. We thought that we would take advantage of that window of opportunity to address some of our facility needs. So if we move to the next slide. The next slide is simply the 33.9 million minus the 33.1 million, which gives us the good of 776,000. We'll go to the next slide. The next slide is our sources of revenue. Where is the money coming from? You can see the state is at 44%, which is about $15 million. We've got local at 24% at 7.9 million. And federal at 33% at 10.9 million. Obviously, the federal has increased given the ESSER funding. Go to the next slide. What are the major revenue sources? EBF revenue is 12.7 million, which is pretty level from last year. And where did the funds go for EBF? 11.3 million went into the education fund, 1.4 million went into the O&M fund. Again, tier funding at 900,000, which was allocated to O&M. Our tax levy was 5.2 million last year. Given all the revenue, I just estimated the tax levy at level. Again, you're subject to CPI, which is 1.4%, I believe, for this year, which would, if I did the math, which would make it about 5.2 or 5.4. But nevertheless, I just went level with our tax levy. ESSER grant is 2.7 million that's budgeted for this year, and that's ESSER 2. ESSER 3 is budgeted at 4 million for this year, but keep in mind ESSER 3 is a $7.2 million grant that will be expended over the next 3 years.
I'm going to stop real quick just to make sure the board knows. EBF revenue is that stands for evidence-based funding. A few years back, the state changed its funding formula. And that was a significant benefit to school districts like ours, because we are taxing, our local taxpayers definitely pay their fair share. And the state determined that based on our needs in our district, that we should be receiving more state funding to help meet the needs of our students. So that's a new formula that came into effect a few years ago. The tier funding, Jenny, help me out, that came from?
So the tier funding, what they did is they determined what an adequate per pupil allocation would be for education. And they looked at where all of the school districts in the state are. So if you look at a full bucket of money, they want all school districts to have that full bucket. So they give you we get our base funding, that EBF funding. That tier funding is a boost that we get because we're only at about 60% of filling our bucket. So every year we get a little bit more. School districts that are already up here with their bucket full don't get anything. So they're going to give us additional tier money. It's called tier 1 money until we have our bucket full to be equitable with other school districts. And they use a bunch of different factors for population to determine that.
And the restrictions on the tier funding, there are restrictions on the tier funding, correct? Or no?
The tier funding is definitely more focused. There's like a whole formula of things that they want to see us utilize that money for that has been put forth through their research of the tipping point to help schools be
Right.
successful.
So we can't complete our wish list with the tier funding. We have to.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
it's overall educational support.
Right.
We would need a lot more money for my wish list.
Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that. Don't ask me what ESSER stands for. That's the COVID related money. All right, next one, right, Marshall?
Sure. These are the other grants that we have. The ESSA, our title grants, 1, 2, and 4 is about 967,000, a little short of $1 million. Our school improvement grant is actually should be 145, I believe. 231 is still in there, but the ideal grant is 464,000. Our preschool ideal grant is 21,000, and our preschool for all PFA grant comes in at 589,000. So this is just a snapshot of some of the other grant revenues that we have.
These are I would say these are highly restricted grants as far as what we're allowed to spend money on. IDEA is special ed. That just to give you an idea of what that stands for.
Okay.
All right.
To the next slide. This is Andy's favorite, the 1% annual sales tax graph here, or it basically shows the last 6 years of what we've received in distributions from the 1% sales tax. You can see each year there's been an increase. And so in 21, 22, basically we took a 5% increase in terms of budgeting the revenue at 1.4 million. This is our revenue comparison. If I would have shown you this budget and said, whoa, we were at 26.7 million, how did you get to 33.9? If it wasn't for the ESSER funding, this budget wouldn't be legitimate, I would say. But nevertheless, there are a lot of funds for us this year and over the next 3 years. And so we had a hike in our total budget. But you'll also see that there's a hike in expenses because most of the increased revenue are grants, which you have to spend the money in order to get the money. So we're looking at 23.1 million in expenses for FY21 and about a $10 million increase in expenses in FY22. But 7.2 million is are actually in revenue. It's increases. And we'll go to the next slide. This is pretty much the pie chart for expenses. Where is the 33 million going? Salaries is at 47%. Benefits is at 11%, and I think I have those.
Did I put the wrong slide in?
No, that's the right slide. And purchase services is at 32%. Supplies are at 8%. Capital outlay is at 2%. You can see purchase services is pretty high, and that's primarily driven by O&M, the 6.6 million in O&M. This is our staffing summary. We've got 19 administrative positions. There are 3 that are non-administrative. There's 115 education support staff, 166 teachers. There are 6 open positions, and the number of students served in FY21 is 1,631. This might not be the updated slide, but it's close.
It's as up to date as it can be. We got more kids today. I actually have an enrollment info in my COVID slides later.
Okay, this is the operating fund summary slide. Basically, this is important because these are our 4 non-restricted funds that ISB uses to determine our district's financial health and if we need to submit a deficit plan. And you can see it's education, O&M, transportation, and working cash. If again, this reads similar to the opening slide. The beginning balance is 14.1 million in terms of revenue. The total revenues, and I'm reading all the way to the right, is 30.5 million. Expenditures are 30 million. So we have revenues over expenses of 569,000 with a projected ending balance of 14.7 million. That last row that indicates 25% minimum fund balance. That's a requirement by ISB in terms of what your ending fund balance needs to be. And that 25% is based on the expenditures. And you can see that we're good there. So the last slide is, again, just a snapshot of revenues and expenses from that slide, 30.5 million in revenue and 30 million in expenses, and for the good of 569,000. And that is our budget for 21-22.
All right,
We
so
have a lot of money
yes,
to spend.
good problem to have. The couple things just to make sure the board understands, and I'm learning this process too, is this is a guess. We don't really know for sure what all of our revenues are going to be. And we can't know for sure what all of our expenses will be. What we're doing right now is we're allocating the anticipated funds that we're going to get, the anticipated revenue, into the specific funds. So if you go back a couple, go back to this very first one, these are the funds that the state asks us to use. So there's an education fund, an O&M fund, a bond fund. And once we allocate the money into those funds, we are expected to spend them within those funds. So we can't take $1 million out of education after we approve the budget and put it into transportation. We can't just make those transfers. We do have some flexibility, but not a lot. So what Marcellus is tasked to do is, what do we think all our revenues are going to be? Fortunately, federal revenue is very, very reliable. The state is not always reliable. We have experienced, some of us in this room have experienced years where the state decided to prorate and not give all of the money that they tell us at the beginning of the year. So there's always a risk in there. which is also why the state expects us to carry a fund balance. Because if we're short on our projected revenues, we're not going to go bankrupt. We're still gonna have money to pay our bills and pay our salary. So things will change a lot. That's why also, when most of you started on the board, and our 3 returnees, but when this board was first seated, we did a budget amendment. So at the end of the year, we're gonna come back and say, here's the budget amendment, because we have to account for all the changes. We're gonna have more revenue or less revenue. Maybe we have to add staff somewhere, we're increasing expenditures. Maybe a roof falls in, and we have to put a new roof on it. Hopefully it's from a storm and the insurance covers it. But that's a joke. Thanks, no, if I have to say it's a joke, it doesn't count. So I just want to make sure you're aware of, the good news is, like Marcelo said at the end, because of the federal funding right now, it's pushing us up to where our fund balances are healthy. But in 3 years, when this federal funding goes away, we're going to go back to only having our base level of state funding, only having our property taxes. So expenses can only increase while we have this increased revenue. All right. So I just talked a lot, but that's.
And if expenses increase over 10% in any particular fund, we have to do an amendment at the end of the year. But this is just a projection of what we think will happen. And then we'll get to May and have a better idea of what's actually going to happen.
Can I ask a question? So am I understanding you guys correctly that you guys did you say you do not have rebudget authority?
We have some, but it's limited.
But only
like-
up to
Yep,
10%?
up to a point.
Well, Tim, if you go over expenses in a particular fund by 10%.
Then you have to like, yes.
And then you must.
All right, that makes sense to me.
So for everyone, and especially new ones, I mean, government budgeting sometimes is very hard to understand, but this is a template of work. And if it's Marcellus's job to advise Scott and Scott's job to advise us that if revenues aren't coming in, then we don't spend the money. It's not like we have this money in the bank right now at the start of our budget year. We're expecting to get the money. But if we don't get the money, then Marcellus says, hey, Scott, we don't have the money. What are we going to cut from the budget or lay low on until we get it? So that is our job. And that's when you get your monthly board books and there's a column on there for percentage of yearly percentage used. Keep your eyes on those numbers. There's some accounts that get spent July 1 automatically because there's stuff that needs to happen at the beginning of the school year. But most of those accounts should reflect the percentage of the year that we're in. And if we're getting off kilter, that's when you start asking questions like what's going on with this account and that account. So in your board packet every year, you should have, or every month, you should have some direct correlation with how we're doing with revenues and expenses. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I have a couple things if nobody doesn't, but. So just a couple items. We did get the taxes on time. I checked with Scott. I just wanted to make sure everybody listening in public, this is the first time in the last couple of years that we got paid on time and last year. So that helps our budget look more accurate and paints a better picture for last year. But I also want to make sure that everybody does understand that we're spending our ESSER funds on one-time expenses, not long-range expenses. Is that correct? So our budget will not be, because I can see somebody look at this budget and not understand, we did increase our budget by a lot, but that's not gonna be, we're not raising everyone's salary a bunch, we're not increasing a bunch of different maintenance that's gonna increase our budget. We're gonna go back to our $28 million budget in 3 years.
Sure.
So, because that could throw a big red flag for the people, so.
Absolutely.
So,
All right.
that's all I have.
Well, now we, go ahead, and unless there's other questions, we vote.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve fiscal year 2022's budget as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Tyler Wilson with the
I'll
first,
second
Mitch Wilson with the second.
it.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Andy Graham,
Aye.
Lodo Johnson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
I,
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
And there is a signature page for this for the book budget that you all have to sign, that we have to submit to the state, so.
Thank you, Marcelo. This is great work. Good job, Scott, on your first one.
thank you.
It's a team effort, all right. All right. Are you handing oh, Mr. Brotherton has the signature sheet, that's great.
You want us to wait, John, or just keep going? He said keep going.
I can make like that.
Item number 11 is an action item. It's a contract with Cheryl Van Hoy. Do you have anything to say on this?
Yeah, so this is unusual, board members. We have a vacancy at Northview that we were not able to fill. This person, Cheryl Van Hoy, some of you may know her actually, has moved out of state. She's able to do the literacy specialist work remotely. And because we were not able to fill that position, we are working with her essentially as a private contractor to be on the up and up. I want to make sure, yes, this was discussed with our association in advance, and I checked with the Regional Office of Education to make sure this is something we can do. She's already been doing it. She's just waiting to start getting paid, frankly. So she's been remoting in and working with kids and working with teachers. It's not something we plan to continue.
Did she used to work for the district?
She actually was the person in this job last year, and she moved, her husband relocated. I think she's watching live right now. She told me she's gonna watch.
Ms. Van Hoy, how you doing?
So the pay structure, just so you know, we're paying her based on where she would have been on our teacher salary schedule.
The $61 an hour.
If that's what it says in it, yes. I think so.
Is that, are we using the extra funds for this, or are we using our?
It would have come out of whatever our regular funding for that position,
Title I.
which is Title I.
So she's getting a total compensation package. It's not, she's getting paid with everything, her benefits that, if she was a teacher, retirement, everything, that's her total
That's the
package.
total she's being paid.
So you look at that hourly wage, we don't pay our teachers that hourly wage, but if you take their total package, it would be the same.
That makes sense.
But so she's just coming in.
She's in Pennsylvania.
Right,
Yeah.
she's just coming in over the computer through Zoom or
So
whatever.
they've got her, I believe the way they have it set up is they have a computer in the office and the kids come in and sit down one-on-one with her. It's sustainable in this model just because she's only one-on-one with kids. And if it was a class, I don't see how that would work for her to do that. So the kids are essentially supervised because they're in the office when they're with her.
There's nobody locally that provides services like that.
No, not that would come in. I mean, if she was local, we would hire her as a regular teacher, though.
Right.
That's what would have happened.
I just didn't know if there was people in the Midwest, Central Illinois that provide those same kind of services that can be here in person for our students.
Yep, if we could find them.
I'll let you guys.
And Mitch, we do that for, when we have to usually it's a specialist position like speech pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy. We may contract out those people through agencies,
Right.
and it costs us considerably more money. So a speech therapist might be $100,000 through a contractor, but $50,000 is our employee. And so we avoid it. We currently subcontract for OT or PT?
Nothing right now.
Nothing? Okay. Hearing them?
As of
Are you
today.
sure? I thought there was one. All right.
And I'll let you guys know, just from personal experience with my own kids, Mrs. Van Hoy is top notch.
Yeah.
She's top notch. So we're getting a
I know
good one.
she's listening in. We should have put in the contract that she still has to do some of the Facebook videos that she used to from last year and the year before.
Maybe she is, I don't know.
Maybe she could send us some to put on the Northfield website.
So, all right, if there's no other questions, we'll need a motion to approve the contract with Cheryl Van Hoy.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Broden with the motion, can we have a second?
I second.
Mr. Johnson with the second.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Andy Graham,
Aye.
Moto Johnson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, item number 12, safe route to school at Pleasant Acres.
All right, well, we are working on another Safe Routes to School grant with the village. The village had this as an action item on their most recent, I'm not on the rest of it. On their most recent agenda. So, and you're probably familiar with the work we did at Northview. We have an update about Northview in your packet in the information section. We are looking though to do another project at Northview to help improve student walkability. That's really the priority. Pleasant Acres, what did I say?
You said Northfield.
Okay, at Pleasant Acres, to address student walkability. Those of you that are familiar with that school, the neighborhood has very little in terms of sidewalks. The traffic and parking is very tight up against that building when you come in. So we're really looking to do some sidewalk improvements is really the biggest thing that we talked about, but actually on the school property. I'm hoping the village will address some of the concerns also in the neighborhood, but it's $120,000 grant that we would receive. I think that's our expenditure, and I believe it's a matching grant. The village is handling the engineering and the planning pieces, so I've already committed us to $8,000 for writing the grant. And I included my letter of support for the grant in the packet, but we have to approve a resolution with the village to move forward on Pleasant Acres. So yeah, I mean, and it's not what that will look like and what that will entail. Jenny and I and Sammy Spestic, the principal there, we walked through with the engineer and two folks from the village to look through what the needs are and what we could do there. So,
So this is just to approve to get it started,
yes.
and then we'll see.
Mhm.
If we get awarded the
We'll
grant.
get it. Huh?
If we get awarded the grant, it'll come back to us
Okay.
with the acceptance and,
Design.
yes.
Yeah. All right, that's it.
All right,
I'm a visual learner.
yeah, no.
I don't know what it looks like quite yet either.
If it looks anything like Northview, it's gonna look 100% better
Right.
over there, so.
Right.
If there's no other questions, let's go ahead and take action on allowing Scott to pursue this grant. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mitch Wilson with a motion. Can I have a second?
I second.
Ms. Pettit with a second.
Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Moto Johnson,
Aye.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Andy Graham,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
All right. I shared about this one. This is compensatory time off for our hourly employees. I'm just updating the policy. I described why, but compensatory time off can be used with hourly employees instead of those hourly employees being paid overtime. Okay. What we're doing is updating the policy to provide more guidance on how to use or how an employee could accumulate that comp time, how much. That's the biggest thing we're looking at. It said, I believe it was 240 hours that an employee could accumulate. And that was a concern to me because that is a risk for the district. If that employee were to leave, we would owe that 240 hours in time as paid to that employee. Custodians are the primary recipients of comp time, and they are not affected by this board policy change because their contract already has language in it. So this policy change is really putting the rest of our employees in the same, on the same footing as the custodians who are already able to do this. So the other group that uses comp time, I would say are going to be our central office secretaries. So Hannah would be an example. So she's here tonight. She's putting in a good 12-hour day. So if she were to go over 40 hours for the week, because of this, we could either pay her overtime or we could give her time and a half hours off. So she could have a half day off or a full day off, depending on how much she accumulates. So we're trying to make sure it's just limited to 30 hours because we do have employees that accumulate more than that, but we need to, it's a risk management thing in my opinion.
Anybody have any questions? If not, we'll move.
Yeah, I
forward.
do.
Okay.
What happens if they do go over 30?
Well, they won't be able to anymore.
Have to pay them. If they're at 30.
That's what I was
Yeah,
asking.
they get overtime.
They would pay
Okay, I
overtime.
guess that's what I meant.
Yeah, if they get over, if their
Okay.
bank is full, then they have to take it as pay.
Okay,
So.
yeah, that's what I was just saying.
And we do have employees right now that will be affected by this who are sitting on more than 30 hours right now.
But that's grandfathered in.
Yeah, so they'll still be able to use it and it's, but they're not allowing folks to accumulate more.
I see.
Is there a use it or lose it in there? You
Trying to
know,
remember.
you get 30 hours this year, you know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can't stack them on top of each other from year to year.
No, they're supposed to be used by the end of the fiscal year. So, but that's a question of what do I do if they don't use it?
Well, you have,
I think I have to pay them out, but I'd have to check.
At the end of the year.
yeah, I don't think that'd be fair to lose it if they.
I don't think I could.
Yeah, I think that would be okay, if there's any, no other questions,
And this can be a voice vote.
okay, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, 7-0.
Hannah has to still click on all your names.
Well, it still has to, the motion still has to be made and seconded.
Oh, we forgot that.
Okay, can we make a motion to approve
I'll
it?
make the motion.
Okay, John made the motion. You want a second? Moto, did you make the second? Moto made the second. Let's do that again for procedural purposes, in case anybody's watching and wants to call us out on that. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carried 7-0, Hannah.
All right, thanks.
All right, this is a fun one now. All right. We are now going to talk about COVID. Ready? I feel like I heard heavy sighs and.
I can't wait till there's a board meeting without a COVID slide.
That's gonna be a while. So let's start off with, so the board, you know, I sent you an email earlier in the week giving you an update on our numbers. This, I would say, was not a good week for positive COVID cases. We had quite a few more cases this week. We are up to 36 total positive cases for the school year so far. In-school close contacts, so that's kids that we have had to send home who are ultimately going to be quarantined. We've had 98. So keep in mind though that positive cases do not necessarily mean the kid is in school and all of a sudden he has COVID. Most of our positive cases are traceable to a contact the kid has outside of school. Siblings, that's another big group. It seems as if one kid gets it, the other kids are probably going to get it in that household. So outside close contacts so far have been 69, and those are just the ones we know of. The health department does not always tell us when a kid is a close contact. So a local daycare was closed down, and we did not find out about that from the health department. And we had a bunch of close contacts in that. We figured it out, but it took a couple days. I could tell you the story later. The other one is, we were told there was an outbreak on a local sports team. And then we have parents contacting us saying that their kids are close contacts and they need to be tested for COVID. And we're not getting that from the health department though, we're getting it from parents. If it's a close contact in school, we know it because it's the school that's telling the health department it's a close contact. So that just shows you where we are with with our staff, with our students. And in the bottom right corner, you see staff. I believe the actual number for staff positives is 5, but that's going back 90 days to count. So I don't know if we've had 4 this school year. No staff have been identified as close contacts because of school. We do have staff that have been out, not very many, because they are close contacts at home with someone. But in order for an adult to be a close contact, they also have to be unvaccinated. And I'll show you some of those numbers in a minute here. Some challenges, and I think it's important to note these things. This school year has been a strain on our employees. I think it's probably been more of a strain this year than last year, and I'll get into that a little bit. Our families, I think it's a different strain also. Some families think it's great because their kids are gone and they're in school all day, but now when your kid gets quarantined, that remote instruction structure is not the same as it was last year. I would say thank our school nurses and secretaries and clericals because their volume of work is so huge right now. We really are trying to work with those two groups as far as what can we take off your plates, what can we start to do. Keep in mind, we have a full-time nurse in every school in a normal year, okay? And now they're doing, last week when I looked, we were doing about 40 COVID tests a day across the district on top of the regular work. And if one of those COVID tests comes back positive, then we have contact tracing. Communication with the health department is we are the CU Health Department volume, and I wrote in Spanish, it looks like. The health department is struggling to keep up with communicating with us. Our health department is I would say we have a very professional health department, but they're overwhelmed. Information about quarantine and returning to school is sometimes inconsistent. So we will send a student home, provide them with the documentation that their student is quarantined, and then the health department is not providing that parent any further guidance in some cases. And we have to have a release from the health department for the student to come back. Reducing close contacts is a challenge. As you see, I mean, a real simple case to see is the Northview case. Now, they've had 1 positive case, 8 close contacts. That's not a good ratio for us. So we have to try to reduce the amount of close contacts. Those close contacts are almost entirely because of meals. And that's a hard thing to fix in a school because we have to provide meals. We have to do it somewhat efficiently because feeding 500 kids in a junior high in an hour and a half requires some coordination. So how do we do that and not cause all of these close contacts? Another challenge is getting vaccinated. All of our employees and nearly all of our 7th and 8th graders are eligible for the vaccine. Many are still not vaccinated, and these people are missing school and work. If vaccinated, we would likely have eliminated all COVID-related cases and quarantine for employees and students age 12 and up. There are cases I'm aware of where I know parents are complaining through various channels, maybe social media, that their child has been quarantined, but maybe their child is also eligible for the vaccine. I can't make those comments on Facebook. But that is partly what we're seeing. Remote learning. We have used the synchronous portion of our remote learning plan with only 1 classroom. We closed a kindergarten class at Pleasant Acres. Those students missed 5 days of school. That class was synchronous. We were not actually shut down by the health department. Every child in the room was either COVID positive or a close contact. Kindergartners don't keep their masks on. That's what we learned, okay? So with 2 cases, we had 2 positive cases and that triggered everybody's in close contact by the time we were done. It is very, very difficult this year for our teachers to provide at-home instruction to individual students who are quarantined. That's probably the biggest concern I've heard from parents is while their kid is quarantined, they don't feel like they're getting much from the school. And that's really compared to what we were doing last year, they aren't getting nearly as much. But our teachers are busy teaching a full school day. So those are some of the challenges. Testing. So since our last meeting, the governor mandated that all employees are either vaccinated or testing. This was a fun week when I got this one. How are we gonna do this? Midweek then, the state said, oh, and you can't use the tests that we've been providing you to do this. Well, then the governor delayed it for 2 weeks and now we might be using the tests we have for our employees. I'll just leave it at that. So beginning next week, we will offer limited on-site testing for unvaccinated employees in order to comply with the testing mandate. The district is not enforcing the vaccine mandate, as this is not required by the recent executive order. There are districts who have approved policies mandating the vaccine. I am not bringing that to you. I do not think that would work. I think we would lose employees over that if we were to mandate. Employees may have to obtain testing independently if they do not attend the on-site testing, or if we are unable to continue to provide the testing, employees would have to go elsewhere to get that. There are counties in Illinois where there is no access to testing. So we are fortunate that our county has a lot of free testing sites and we are also able to provide the testing. There are 2 MOUs, that's a memorandum of understanding for approval on the agenda tonight, which actually is part of this agenda item. And that is, we work with both of the associations to update what testing would look like and that it's required under this executive order, and a little bit about what happens if you don't comply. At this time, the district is not acting on medical or religious exemption requests because they do not apply yet. Until the governor says the vaccine itself is mandated, we're really not needed to go through and process those requests. We've had 9 religious exemption requests and we have had no medical exemption requests. Currently, we have 69 employees who are not fully vaccinated, which means about 80% of our employees are fully vaccinated. 8 of 69 are in progress, and once they're done, that'll bring us to 81% vaccinated, and I feel like that math is wrong.
I was trying to figure out.
It should be higher than 81%, so thank you. I'll fix that later. So starting next week, 63 of 69 must start testing. We have the 5 employees who have had COVID in the last 90 days don't have to test. And then we have 1 employee who's on a leave of absence right now and isn't going to be in the buildings. So it's going to be fun.
Those that have to test, are they testing before school, after school?
So each school has a morning, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, where they are providing tests for the employees. If the employee misses that window, they're going to have to go get it third party.
Who pays
Before
for it?
school.
Only Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Yes, and only one time in this. So if you are an aider employee, your testing window is Friday at 7 a.m. this next week.
Right.
That's what it is next week.
Well, what I'm saying is so they could go Monday through Thursday.
So the mandate,
Having COVID, being in the building with COVID and then Friday testing.
Mandate's only once a week.
yeah, but we're only required to do testing once a week. So it seems weird the first week, but when you map it out, it comes out to, if I'm an aider employee, I will be testing every Friday. So.
I just thought you would want to test at the beginning of the week.
Yeah, on Monday.
Who's gonna pay for the third-party testing if we can't provide it for our teachers? 'Cause
So-
you're requiring that to do their job, so that should be the district's problem.
So in Champaign County, there are multiple free testing sites, and it is no cost to the employee. It is a cost to our insurance carrier for the district. It does cost the district to do it. And there should be no direct cost to an employee who's doing it in Champaign County. But we do pay for it as a district if they use our insurance.
So,
I've seen some concerns real quick about, especially at Ader with the amount of kids being able to space out in the lunchroom, you know, and not be possibly a close contact or being able to space out. Has there been any thoughts on that, or maybe allowing some kids to eat in their classrooms or?
And that's the piece that we're working on in all the buildings. Northview, Broadmeadow, and PA have smaller student populations and seem to be, you know, obviously the one they had at Northview knocked them out, but the systems they have in place are pretty good as far as lunch. Breakfast in the classroom is a challenge because kids aren't 6 feet apart in the classroom. At Ader, though, they are already using the annex gym, the cafeteria, and multiple classrooms to spread the kids out. So breakfast is a sore spot, frankly, right now, because they're in the classroom. We're having some conversations about possibly not having breakfast in the classroom for the duration of COVID, going back to a model like we did before breakfast in the classroom. You know, the negative on that is we have a lot more kids eating breakfast right now when it's served after the bell. But we're possibly, we want to really reduce the number of kids that are having to be quarantined. And I just want to be truthful too. We're not aware of, with the exception of the kindergarten classroom at Pleasant Acres, okay? Where, as I said, kindergartners, they really struggle to keep those masks on. We are not aware of any student-to-student COVID transmission at school. So we are getting, kids are being quarantined because they're technically close contacts, but then we're not seeing any relation to those kids who are quarantined actually getting COVID. I've reached out to the health department, I've asked these questions. I've said, we are doing everything we're supposed to do. Is there any way that we can do test to stay with these kids and not have to do quarantine? And at this point, they're not budging on that.
I don't know if staff allows here at Ader, but has there been any thoughts like on nice days, either eating breakfast or lunch outside or maybe using the park over here?
Well,
or anything like that at all?
Yeah, my sarcastic response is we're thinking of sending them all over to the high school so they can mill around outside the building like the high schoolers do over here now. But no, yeah, they can, yeah, and I hope they are going outside sometimes, but we don't have picnic tables and stuff like that. But yeah, they go outside for recess at 8 or during lunch. I know that. So, I was at Northview yesterday too, and like, so Northview's really got a good system in their cafeteria now where they're pretty spread out. East Lawn just doesn't have anywhere to put kids for lunch. They're very tight.
I wonder if it would be something to look into, getting picnic tables at some of the schools on the concrete playground area or somewhere to allow kids to go outside during those times.
All
So
right, go ahead.
are you saying that the children that are testing positive for COVID are getting it from another source and then bring it to school, and then there's these close contacts, but when the other children that are quarantined are not
testing positive.
testing positive?
Well, they're also not necessarily testing. So they could be positive, but we would never know it because they haven't tested. But
Okay.
we're not getting, we do get notified by the health department of positive COVID cases. And so we don't get notified on our close contacts of them getting it.
So they could go home, have the sniffles and think that it's just a cold. But
Or go home with no symptoms and never test and
Right.
be positive.
Well, there's been a few instances where I have heard of parents sending their kids to school with symptoms because they gotta go to work.
Yep.
Then, you know, so that's another thing. If your kid has symptoms,
Stay home.
stay home.
What's the timetable on the, that they gotta be quarantined?
It's 10 days.
Is it a full?
And so I'm hopeful that at some point as the COVID numbers start to come back down, which they are already, not necessarily in our schools, as I showed you with that number right there, but in the county, it's starting to come down again. And that they might start to relax some of those quarantine restrictions, because we do have the testing capacity now to test the kids to know if they've got COVID. So.
Well, I guess the concerns I have, and I've shared them with a couple of you over the last couple of weeks, is the governor is making a mandate for us to test our unvaccinated. I think we need to do everything in our possibility, which I know you are, even if it's looking for outside sources to get test kits from somewhere else besides the health department. Because I think we need to provide that test for our staff that has chosen not to get vaccinated for whatever reason it may be. Whether you agree with it or not, they've chosen, they're adults, they made the decision not to vaccinate themselves. We should be able to test for them because, and the governor should be providing it, to be honest with you. I've talked to a couple state legislators already and told them those feelings, and then we really need to keep working. If you know anybody, and we need, since we have the capacity of testing, we need to have test to stay, because that we keep more kids in the building, and we need to get to there. And that's not Scott's decision. I just want to make sure everybody knows that, and the people that are watching, it's not Scott's decision.
And we are working to secure enough testing to be able to provide it for our kids.
So, but if we could test to stay, if we can get the health department to agree to that tomorrow, that'd be awesome. But
I'm almost done with the
Okay.
COVID stuff. So now the remote learning plan. The other thing is, so in the same week that the governor mandated testing, ISB gave us new rules on remote learning, which we'd already started at school. So you can imagine the uproar that happened across school districts. Basically, the guidance said you have to do what you did last year. And if you don't do what you did last year, you need a new plan. So here's our new plan, okay? Because we cannot do what we did last year. And when I say do what you did last year, not saying that any kid can stay home and be remote. But if any kid is quarantined, the state was saying, you're supposed to provide the synchronous live instruction where kids are zooming into the classroom, unless you do a new remote learning plan. So that's why this new remote learning plan is up here. This is up for approval tonight. Individual students who are quarantined are provided approximately 5 hours of schoolwork a day. We are unable to provide synchronous instruction to all students who are quarantined. We have some cases where teachers are choosing to go synchronous with their kids. They're more comfortable with the technology and they have kids that'll log in, but for the most part, when a student's quarantined, they are doing traditional old-fashioned schoolwork. Time spent on schoolwork will vary greatly depending on individual students. So some kids are not going to spend, any of you that had remote kids last year in your own household know this. Some things take your kid 3 times as long as the teacher thinks, and some things your kid will get through in 2 minutes. So it really does vary. If a classroom, grade level, school, or the district is shut down for an adaptive pause, that's the official term now, and the health department is the unit that declares the adaptive pause, okay? I would talk with the health department. So for instance, in the kindergarten case at Pleasant Acres, I talked to the health department. And I was prepared for them to say, yeah, we've got to do the adaptive pause because you've got 2 kids in the same room with COVID, not from the same household. It didn't come to that because, as I said, all the kids ended up being close contacts. But so what the plan is if we go on an adaptive pause is on day 1 of the adaptive pause, students will be provided approximately 5 hours of asynchronous schoolwork. So that means no live instruction. It's really a day for our teachers to get ready. It's a day for them to put together materials, switch their classrooms over, and be ready to broadcast live from their classrooms. And it's also an opportunity for the parents to make sure they come into the school, pick up any technology they need to be able to work from home. For the remainder of the adaptive pause, students will have about 3 hours of synchronous schoolwork and 2 hours of asynchronous work. that will look similar to what we were doing last year. But it's only happening because all of the kids are home. We're not doing some are here and some are home. I want to make sure I always share that pre-K and kindergarten students, they're going to follow a modified model. 3 hours of screen time for a pre-K kid is actually longer than a pre-K student's school day. So we're not going to do that. Kindergarten kids aren't going to sit on their Chromebook and do that either. So there's going to be some different plans for the kids. We're also trying to make this manageable for our teachers to do it. It is not the ideal. Our ideal would be all of our kids are here in school and we're not quarantining kids on a regular basis. Okay. One thing I wanted to point out was enrollment. It's moderately related to COVID. One of the questions though that comes up is, how has our enrollment been affected by COVID? You can draw your own conclusions, but this was the 1920 school year. So midway through this, so this was an unusually high year anyway. So we don't know why. Something was in the water. We had a lot of kids that year. The average is this orange line. So since 2014, our average enrollment has been 1,708, so right around 1,700 kids, typically. For whatever reason, 1920, maybe they all knew COVID was coming, I don't know. But we went up to 1,835. Then COVID, we dropped down. That is a huge year-to-year difference right there. But really, when we look at it, we're even, close to even with what we've seen as our historic average for enrollment in the district. And on day 5 of our school year, this number was lower. Now, what am I comparing? This is every year on October 1st, we do the full housing report. It's the official count of kids. It's also what's used to do our sales tax revenue. We don't have October 1st yet. We're not there. So this is October 1st of all these years compared to 2021. If you took out our anomaly year, 2019, so this weird high year, our average is 1,690. So we really are right around what our historical average is for enrollment. So that was just a side point on COVID. So it clearly caused, I wonder, would we be sitting here with 1,500 kids right now if it wasn't for COVID? I don't know. Final thoughts. Masks. I just want you all to know, masks are the least of our challenges in our schools right now, okay? No teachers have called the central office to say, oh, if only I could get rid of masks. That's not what we're worried about right now. This is a very hard year for our employees. I cannot say that enough. Last year, most of our certified employees, that's our teachers, had an additional 2 hours a day without students in their classrooms in order to plan and put in place instruction for students learning from home. Last year, our support staff, so custodians, secretaries, nurses, classroom assistants, they typically had an additional 2 hours per day without students to help reset the building, clean, and do contact tracing. Now, all of our employees are trying to do those jobs and not have that extra time to do it. Managing COVID stuff, I don't know what else to call it, it's the COVID stuff, with all students in attendance makes it much, much harder to do the regular stuff that we are supposed to be doing as a school and as a district. I'm getting a little edgy here, I realize on my PowerPoint. The state is placing, in my opinion, an excessive burden on schools to serve as public health experts and as healthcare providers. This is not what we do or who we are. We've been provided additional funds to do this, but we don't have people to do the work. We can't hire people. We could add 5 more nurses right now and we'd keep them busy. We don't have people to do it. We couldn't hire them if we wanted to. So we need more people to adequately educate our students and serve in this other role as a COVID mitigation team in our buildings. So I say all this because I just want to make sure, I think you're all aware of what our teachers are experiencing and all of our staff right now, but I'm trying to be as clear as possible that, you know, last year at least, a teacher got to say goodbye to the kids around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and then they got some time to regroup and plan for their remote stuff that they were doing. So please thank your school employees when you see them. Give them hugs, throw cash at them. They'll be happy. Right? Don't really throw cash at them. That feels weird. So, all right, fine. That was it for COVID. So, well, we can discuss some things if you want, but there are 3 things in the motion that you'd be doing to approve. One is the MOU with the Support Staff Association. One is the MOU with the Teacher Association. And one is the remote learning plan in case the state shows up and asks to see it.
Could we get a motion for the COVID plan for this month?
Make a motion.
Mr. Mitchell made a motion. Can we get a second?
I second.
Moto second. Then can we have a voice vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Did you get that?
Anybody abstaining?
Aye.
Okay, so we have 5 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention. Okay.
All right. Everything else it's all downhill from here. All right. Lease agreement with Rancho Park District, not the Rancho Recreation Department. They're different. Anyway, we are renting or leasing the, so we've got these tennis courts right outside the door here. We worked with with the Park District recently to redo the north, that's north, right? The north courts to do pickleball courts, volleyball, tennis. The south courts are not salvageable. The south courts need to be basically torn out and do something with them. So we are working on, the Rancho Park District is fortunately for us, giving it to us for $1 a year to do with what we want. I'll lead into the next item, just to preview it, but we do have a plan for what we would like to do with that property. And the Park District is okay with us doing what we're talking about doing. We're looking to get some grant funds and convert that tennis court, tear it out, clean it up, and allow us to have some additional parking for Ader. Really, we'd love to redo the front of Ader at some point so that we have a better traffic flow. It's not good when you're doing pickup. If you're a pickup parent at Ader, it's a mess out there. So we're hoping that with this, we'll be able to get all of our employees who park on Wabash, off of Wabash, into the parking lots that we have. Because we don't have enough parking in the existing parking spaces right now without using Wabash. So anyway, the first one is to approve the lease agreement with the Rancho Park District for $1.
Is there any questions on this?
Are we talking about each one differently?
Yeah, the next one's the second. Yeah, the grant's next.
Any questions on this? Okay, can we get a motion to accept this?
I make the motion to accept it.
Mr. Robinson made the motion to accept the lease agreement. Can we get a second?
A second.
Mitch seconded it.
We have to do a roll call because we're spending $1.
Yep.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Andy Pettit.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
All right, now the maintenance grant. Jenny, you want to talk about what this is? And so this is what we are hoping to do with that parcel. All right, so do you want to share, Jenny?
Sure, so the maintenance grant, we have utilized this maintenance grant probably 3 times. I've written it, this will be my second time writing it. When we did the, all the fire, updated our fire units, our fire alarms, we utilized this maintenance grant that comes from the State Board of Education. It is a maintenance matching grant, which the maximum is $50,000 that they'll contribute, and then we contribute whatever additional. So if it cost us $45,000, they would pay $45,000. So we're looking at writing for converting that into a parking lot with a drive that will go out to, what is the road out there? I forgot.
Veterans Parkway.
No, it's not Veterans. Urbana, no, yes.
Urbana, thank you. Out to Urbana. So right now, we're just waiting on getting numbers, estimates on what that is, so that I would be able to write for the maintenance grant. Most of the stuff that they ask us to do for the maintenance grant has to do with health, life, safety, and so this would fall under that category.
Mitch, you had some questions?
For you,
Okay.
can we not get recreation employees to take the fence and stuff down? I saw that it was in, like, part of the grant is for removal of fencing and
That would,
stuff like that.
that'd be a question for Dr. Woods. It'd be inappropriate for me to ask that on behalf of the school district, so.
Well, that's Park District, right?
Is that Park District
That's
or?
Park
That is Park District, so we have, the village has a maintenance agreement with the Park District. So that would be a question that Dr. Woods would have to, and I would have to abstain from anything of those discussions.
I'm just saying, like, I guess it would be if we didn't get the grant or we didn't get enough for the grant, like, we clearly have all the manpower and tools to take out the tennis courts and fences down. Just a
That is a
thought.
project, yes.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just
And I think there's some work that we can do.
see if
on
we
these
can
projects, but-
see if the village would partner with us on taking that down, especially if,
This would be another project that would have to go out to bid
for what?
for doing that because of the cost estimate. It will clearly be over $25,000.
You're
So
right.
it will have to go out to bid. And
That's why I was asking
I think-
if we could partner with the park board in the village to, hey, can we take this eyesore down, just tear it down? I don't know how much money they would need to do that or if they would need any.
So we would own it after tonight for the lease for $1. So at that point, then it would be our responsibility to take care of that land. Now, whether they would want to have
Yeah.
volunteer, there's all sorts of insurance issues when you have volunteers and so there'd have to be some legal stuff that would have to happen, but
I think what Mitch is asking, and I think it's worth a question to be asked, is if you or Scott wanted to ask the village if they wanted to partner with us in this, then that would be a question you guys would have to initiate.
It's not that hard to take down chain link fence.
Yeah. So, but if they said no, then we'd have to put it in the bid documents, so.
Yeah, so all we're asking though for tonight is that you're okay with us going for the grant. I think that's a good.
And that's fine, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of other options, I guess, Jenny, if we don't get the grant or they don't give us as much as we thought they were going to.
How long is the lease for, Jenny?
indefinitely, they cannot give us that land because it's federal land. So that is the reason for $1 a year lease.
Yep.
They would be willing to give it to us if they could, but they just
But
can't.
I think is your question, could they just turn around and say, oh, now we have a
Yeah,
park?
now we have a parking lot for the softball game.
It's gonna be used for softball. And I mean, in my mind, it's gonna be a parking lot anyone's gonna use eventually, so.
Okay.
I mean, I would.
I just didn't want to throw,
They let us use the pickleball court, so it's
Yeah.
a partner.
but yeah, like you said, it's gonna, if it costs us 45 and them, they're gonna pay for it. I didn't want us to get into it and then we throw 45,000 at it and they say thanks and they put a piece of chain link so that we can't drive in from
Yeah.
the Urbana.
That would be a problem.
You know?
So there's gonna.
I'd have to go to a park district meeting then.
There's gonna be an exit going straight through this grass lot.
No, straight south to, yeah, straight, there'd probably have to be a couple trees removed, probably be a little bit.
We walked it, there shouldn't be any
Okay.
trees removed. There's actually.
What about the bike path, is that, and no?
There's actually a,
Is there a disc
kind
golf
of an
thing right there?
old part of a road that goes out that way already. The little water area that's surrounded by a fence that we need to clean up anyway, that was just an
Okay.
old solution. So we have our architect who's gonna come out and walk it with us. And they'll do all the site stuff and give us the information of what needs to be done.
Once again, if we get the grant, then we'll have drawings to show and all that.
There's no disc golf things in the way.
No, because that was one of the big things that, we don't touch the disc golf, but it'll go next to it, it won't.
Gotcha.
So
We'll
then,
hit cars.
so once again, this is just allowing Jennifer and Scott to go out and seek the grant, and then we can ask some more pertinent questions if we receive the grant. So if we could get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
okay, John made the motion, can we get a second?
Okay.
Joe made, seconded. We have to do voice vote, or,
This one we can do a voice vote.
yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, motion carries 7-0.
All right.
Item number 17.
Some fun business here. So there are two documents that were provided to you. One is a memorandum of understanding with our support personnel. And another is basically wage increases and incentives for substitute teachers. I don't know of any districts right now that are saying, oh, we have plenty of substitutes, okay? The market is very difficult. One of the things that our district started doing 4 years ago was we have full-time substitutes. It's a much better way for us to fill sub positions because we know on any given day, we're gonna have at least X number of employees out. So we have full-time employees who are substitutes. Those positions are not all filled at the moment. Oftentimes, the full-time substitutes are also filling in for maternity leaves or other medical leaves for our teachers. So we're looking to increase the daily sub rate. So those are the subs who just come in when they want to. We are looking to increase our long-term sub rate, the permanent sub rate, and the retired teacher sub rate. All of them we already are pretty darn competitive, but we also are paying a lot of our subs to drive here from Champaign-Urbana. And so that's one reason we've typically been higher than Champaign-Urbana. We're really just hoping that this is another tool that we'll have to be able to go out and recruit subs. The part with the Support Staff Association is sometimes they are pulled to sub in classrooms. This documents a lot, putting in a structure for us to do that with that association. Assuming the person's qualified to be a sub, we would pay them additionally. The reason we're paying them additionally is when they sub, they are actually changing retirement systems for that day. So they're going from a municipal, the IMRF, the Illinois Municipal Retirees Fund, to TRS, the Teacher Retirement System. So there's higher deductions in the TRS system, and they're losing that day of service in their IMRF. So in talking with that association, they actually think the $50 additional a day is definitely worth it. There's just not a huge amount of opportunity for us to do that. But really, again, I said, this is trying to give us, put us in a better position to recruit some quality teachers, substitute teachers.
Does anybody have any questions for Scott on this one? If not, could we get a motion to approve the substitute teacher incentives as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I don't care who, Mr. Brunson with the motion, Ms. Bennett with the second.
I wrote down my name first.
Okay, there you go. You guys tied and I didn't know. I'm left-handed, so I went with my left side first.
Miss Pett, was that?
Yep. And this does involve money, so we need a roll call vote.
All right, Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Joe Robinson.
Aye.
Vicky Pettit.
Aye.
Mona Johnson.
Aye.
Andy Graham.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
All right, information items. There are several here. And so an information item is just in here because we're not really going to vote on it. If you have questions, we can discuss any of these things, but we had a couple FOIA requests last month, nothing significant in those. We received our annual LEA determination for special education. So this is kind of like an accreditation process, I would say. And Allison and her team got a perfect score on it from ISB. So woohoo! Now, go ahead and, you're supposed to present now for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right.
Moving on.
No, we have an update in there on the Northview Safe Routes to School, a status update on that. We had the big rain where Gibson City got flooded. The good news is our detention pond did exactly what it was supposed to do. It filled up and then it drained. But we got phone calls about it in the neighborhood. Did you know there's a big pool out there? I'll give it an hour and it drained. So it did what it was supposed to do. It does look a lot nicer over there at Northview where I know we're seeking quotes to go ahead and redo some of the other sidewalk that's in front of the building. Because now the existing sidewalk
Looks terrible.
that's still there looks
So
kind
it'll
of
be the
ratty.
new marquee and all new
That's what we need.
sidewalks all over
Yeah.
the front.
Yep, so there's a document that was also shared with our Buildings and Grounds Committee of recent planned and ongoing facilities projects. A lot of years, Shannon, our facilities director, would present that to you so you see all the stuff that's going on and all the projects. She is out on leave at the moment, medical. So she's not able to come in and do that, but all of that information, I think that's a piece I would want to look at as a board member because it really is a lot of stuff that we are constantly addressing and maintaining.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Quick question on that, you might know the answer. We probably voted on it. East Lawn getting a new sign.
Yep, they all are.
Okay.
So that's in that. It's
Just one day I was driving, I noticed the sign was gone at East Lawn. I'm like, guess they're getting a new sign.
yep, all 5 schools are getting a new marquee, a new digital marquee. So, and Ader's never had one. So they're getting their
Oh,
first.
yes, they did.
Huh? They did? Where did it go?
It disappeared a few years ago, but it was there.
It disappeared when all
Why
that
would you get-
sidewalk and front entrance.
Well, before they did the reconstruction.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you put a new one back in?
A long time.
The-
Yeah.
The only question I had on those marquees is a couple of them were named after fallen staff members. I know Northview was.
Yeah.
Are we going to do something?
Keep.
I'm looking right at Jenny because I have no idea.
You mean the plaque? that
No,
was
the front side of Northview was in memory of
Mrs.
Jenny
Depa.
Depa.
Yeah,
No.
I think they took the sign off and they'll just have it in another location.
Okay, so it'd be something to memorize.
Yeah, it
Oh,
would
yeah,
not go on the
yeah.
digital marquee.
On the marquee,
They're
yeah.
like flat screen TVs,
Yeah.
so
Right, so I mean, I
there'll be
just,
another location for it.
yeah,
And
okay.
I do want to note that I guess this is where I get to be the superintendent. When I looked and I saw how the Ader sign was installed, it was originally installed parallel to Wabash Avenue, which meant the only person who would really ever see it is the house across the street. So we are switching it so that it's perpendicular to Wabash and will be a 2-sided sign. But there is an expense to that because they've already done that concrete work out there. And the sign was only 1-sided that we initially ordered. But the whole point is people are driving by,
Yes.
they'll be able to see that. Yeah, marquees. There's so many. I'm amazed at the number of facilities projects that are going on. And obviously we're in the room with the lighting and if Miss Palmer in the back corner moved more, that light would turn on. It's a little frustrating right now in some of our classrooms. I sat down with a parent in an office today and we sat down and apparently we hadn't made enough motion and after about a minute, it went completely dark. So the lights have not been calibrated yet. That's they have to come through and do the settings on them. But it's really noticeable in some of our spaces. And I see the cost savings already and they turn off when the room's empty. And that's going to be a long-term savings for us.
Do we have a tear down date for the canopies at East Lawn yet?
We do, if I remembered. Do you remember?
Yes, between the delay with the decision, we got bumped back in the queue, and then there's now a delay in the materials. So it will now be a spring, summer project.
And on that, if materials go down after the first of the year, are we still locked in at that price? Or is there
I think,
What we voted on, the amount, the 1.2
let's
that
just
we
say,
voted
they've
on.
already made some adjustments on our behalf
Okay.
to lower the price, so.
I would just,
Yeah.
I've had
I don't think we-
conversations and people think that we can't predict the future, but people think that building
If they
materials are
go
supposed
up,
to go
we're
down.
locked in at the price that we locked in at as
Right.
well. So,
Okay.
but yeah, they went ahead and gave us some additional discount, so.
There is a first reading of a board policy, policy 450. I'll briefly explain what that is. That is our spending policy. That's what we use when we spend money. There is a need at times for Marcellos to be able to write checks. So you may not know this, but most of our bills, we have to wait until the board meeting for those checks to go out. We do have some vendors and service providers we work with that will not provide the service unless they have the check in hand. There's not that many of them, but we're updating policy 450 to allow me, because that's the way the policy is written, that's how they usually are, and my designee to write checks up to $5,000. For those purposes, it's written out in that policy. It would still appear in your board packet in the bills section. You would still be voting on it, but we will have actually written that check. So a recent example was Allison was registering some of her staff for some professional development that they were going to go and attend. They could not attend that professional development unless it was paid for, and this company would not take credit cards or POs. So we're really, I mean, it's a fairly limited number of places where we would use this. But most vendors now would take a credit card and we would have been able to use it, but we run into it occasionally.
Are we being hit with late fees by waiting till the board meeting? Like with the village power?
The regular bills, so this is the other thing as we were going through the policy, we don't need board approval to go ahead and pay regular bills, utility bills. So we should be able to, I mean, again, it's all gonna appear on the statements monthly, but credit cards, utility bills, all of those things, we should be able to pay on time, because there is an exception for that already in that policy.
Okay, I just didn't want to be estimated, because like the village is 10%, I think.
Yep.
I didn't want to be,
And that has been a problem, but I think it was this month, Marcellus and I were reading the policy, and we're like, wait, we can go ahead and pay these, especially to avoid late fees.
Right.
Building and Grounds Committee, we did meet. I have to apologize for not reminding Tyler and Mitch. I know you had wanted to come, so we will make sure to at least remind you and work on finding a time that is going to be better for you. But we did meet. It would have been nice if we had you there, but I'll take responsibility for that. And we realized we needed some teachers on the group too, because it was administrators and custodians and maintenance staff that were in the group. But we did have our first meeting. All right, that's it for information items.
Okay, number 19, board and superintendent comments. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make at this time?
Got a whole bunch. All right, I'm actually gonna go ahead and give my comments to Anna, so she can enter them into the minutes without having to read them all to you. It's a summary of some of the things we've done over the last month in the district, but for the sake of time and knowing we have to go into closed session, I will just have her enter those into the minutes.
Okay. All right, does anybody else have anything?
I think it behooves us as a board to make a public thank you to our faculty and staff for what they've been doing. So they're going well beyond. It's a very trying time, and they are doing their level best. And they should publicly thanked.
Well,
Thanks everybody, top to bottom.
I'm glad you did that, because I was gonna say the same thing as our staff is, I see the exhaustion on the teachers' faces, out in public at different events, and I will say this, it's great to see a lot of staff members, and Scott, I'll tell you this, a lot of your junior high staff has been out watching games, this year, and I see them at the kids' events that are going on in the community. So, and you can see that they're tired, but they're still out there supporting the kids. So we just need to keep working. And if you talk to people that have connections in your local health departments and government and the local government or state governments, we need to keep pushing them to give us some clarity and give us a little bit of ease in navigating through these times. And that'll make everybody's job, from our job as board members, Scott's job as a superintendent, and then the rest of the staff's job a lot easier, because a lot of their policies and mandates don't make a lot of sense sometimes.
Would the board be interested in, I don't know what it would be, but there is a budget that the board has to do things. So in the past, their district has done a holiday gift for teachers, those kinds of things. I'm not thinking of something on that scale, but if there was something we wanted to do, if teachers, all of our employees eat a lot. We can't give them cash, that's not really allowed. But if, let me know as a board if that's something, and I can put Hannah right on it.
Well,
I'll send you some ideas.
well, yeah, like I said, if you guys want to text me some ideas, then I'll pass those on to Scott, and we'll come up with something that we can do for them. That's within budget and
It
within.
can't be a surprise if we do it in open session.
Yeah.
Just piggybacking off of John, and being an educator at the high school, we've got 45 teachers that are teaching an overload over there, and we're missing positions too, and you just walk around and feel like a zombie sometimes. So anybody that's in education, just thank them right now. There's not a lot of people going into education currently. So I know how a lot of those teachers are feeling. So just keep up the good fight and do what's best for kids.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there's no other items to be talked about, it is time to go to closed session. So somebody will need to read the description of why we wanted to close session. Anybody would like to make that motion? Okay, I'll read it.
Andy should.
The board will meet in closed session regarding the following: considering the employment, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against the employee to determine its validity. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Next time, the second has to read it. Okay, so we are now in closed session.
All right, so.
Oh, no, you need to take a roll call vote, sorry.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Andy Graham,
Aye.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Vicky Pettit,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson.
Aye.
Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so First order of business is, are we back recording? Oh,
Yes.
Okay, we need to make a motion to come out of closed session.
I move.
Ms. Pettit made the motion to come back out of closed session.
I'll second.
Okay,
All right. Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Mitch Wilson,
Aye.
Joe Robinson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit,
Aye.
Noto Johnson,
Aye.
Andy Graham,
aye.
John Bugby.
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Item number 22, adoption of a resolution to dismiss an educational support person. So bear with me, anybody who's listening or anybody sitting here, we have a couple pages that we need to read to make this official. Resolution to dismiss and to authorize notice of dismissal and charges. Whereas the Board of Education of Rantoul City School District number 137, Champaign County, Illinois, has a responsibility to manage and operate the schools of said district, and whereas the Board of Education has the power to dismiss educational support personnel for sufficient cause pursuant to the school code. And whereas the Board of Education has received and reviewed information, reports, and recommendations from its administrative staff regarding the conduct of Artrice Ross, a cook, which indicated that her conduct has been and continues to be unsatisfactory. And whereas in a closed session before the Rantoul Board of Education on September 16th, 2021, the Board of Education offered Artrice Ross an opportunity to respond to the allegation that her conduct has been and continues to be unsatisfactory. And whereas the Board of Education has heretofore determined that such reasons and causes have a detrimental effect on the school district, and whereas the Board of Education hereby finds and determines that the best interest of the district required the dismissal of Artrice Ross as an educational support person in conformance with and for the reasons set forth in the exhibit attached hereto and made part of hereof. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Rantoul City School District number 137, County of Champaign, State of Illinois, as follows. Section 1, Artrice Ross be and is hereby dismissed as an educational support person for the reasons of causes set forth in notice of dismissal and charges, a copy of which is attached to hereto and incorporated by reference herein. Section 2, the President and Secretary of the Board of Education are hereby authorized to direct to serve upon Artrice Ross a true and correct copy of this resolution and notice of dismissal and charges said services to be both by certified mail and return receipt requested, first class U.S. mail and electronic mail. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect forthwith upon its adoption. Adopted on this day of September, 16th day of September, 2021, by the following vote. Do a voice vote.
We need a second.
Okay, I need a second to that.
I'll second.
Mr. Tyler Wilson seconded. I will.
Now you have to read it.
You gotta read it.
It's a joke.
Okay. Do we do a voice vote or can we do? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstaining? And nobody's absent. Okay. It passes. Okay, next item of action is, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion.
I second.
Mr. Mitch Wilson? Are you okay? Okay, you gave me the finger, so I didn't know what that meant.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on, Mr. Mitch Wilson with the motion and Ms. Nikki Pettit with the second. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, everybody have a good week.
There's a lot for you to say.
Oh, good.
I'll go turn the camera off and stop recording.
Okay.
A lot to start. Andy, we had a lot to come.
That's what I heard.